Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. We kind of have a follow-up to the part 1 teaser. This was mainly thanks to when I watched 1010's live stream. Might have been actually today technically, but in the very early morning, but if not, it was last night. Um, Going over, I guess there were some leaked changes, or at least people were talking about them. I don't know, it's kind of confusing because it looks like there's been some amount of promotional stuff for it. This is a video from bilibili. It's going to be in 360p because I don't have a bilibili account, nor do I feel like signing in to create one. But I really just want to go over like certain parts anyway, which is that they basically show off kind of this new area. Again, it's going to look really bad because it's 360p. But this is basically kind of some of the new area. And the Bahamar Highlands or Plateau. I forget what they called it before. Yeah, I don't remember. It's Bahamar something. But this is basically a look at the new area, some of the new characters and cutscenes, more of the new area, which actually looks pretty cool. A lot less deserty than I thought it was gonna be, but you know, I guess it is what it is. This is an NPC that's important. This is the NPC that we've been introduced to that I talked about in the previous video, who's the like miner treasure hunter person. And again, you kind of get this like chasm underground area, all that type of stuff. Looks pretty cool as is. And then this here, so I talked about it a little bit before where I wasn't sure. And like I wasn't sure what type of content they would add in season 2 in terms of like the amount of it, right? Honestly, I was kind of expecting less, which was like if they introduced, I don't know, even like 2 or 3 dungeons and then maybe like a new raid series, I was like thinking like maybe that's what we would get and it wouldn't be much more past that, right? Turns out I was very much underestimating it. They are doing 6 more dungeons, so in total we'll be at 12 dungeons. I assume that the 6 dungeons will be in like that same dungeon queue machine, but in like the next area, I would assume, because I think that they, based off on kind of how the world looks, I assume that there might actually be a new city or village or something that has it in that area. I could be wrong, but that's just a guess there. But they basically have 6 dungeons that they confirm, and let me see if I could go to it here. Yeah. So here are kind of the preview images for all 6 dungeons. This one in the bottom right corner, by the way, is already like viewable, and it's one of the stages used during the trials. If you do the solo path trials, um, it's one of those, which is kind of neat because I kind of mentioned that I felt like some of these would be used for something, and this one is being used for one of the new dungeons. Although apparently, I think it was a dungeon that did exist during one of the CBTs that got removed or changed or replaced, and then I guess they're reintroducing it back for season 2. But so we are getting 6 more dungeons. We are also getting another 3 boss raid series with season 2, which is nice. Apparently, the theme for season 2 is dream. At least that's what I've heard. And a lot of these dungeons, I've been said, will have new mechanics, and should be maybe a little bit more difficult or more tricky, or just have new types of mechanics. I've heard, I think in 1010's live stream, there was like what they translated as a reverse marker, which I wasn't really sure what that meant, aside from like maybe like the AoE marker you see on the ground is the one that actually doesn't go off first, so I don't know. But also that there would maybe be like flying mechanics in the middle of fights. We'll see. We kind of had a little taste of that with the Dragonclaw Valley, but that was more of just flying to chase after them rather than to actually do anything in combat with them. And also wasn't even really flying as much as it was hovering, so we'll see. But so we have the new area, the new dungeons, and then a new 3 boss raid will be confirmed, and that there will be new mechanics in the dungeons. But talents and skills will remain unchanged from what we are aware of. So let me actually hop back in game. As far as we are aware, the skills and whatnot here are not going to be changed, nor are the talent trees going to be changed, right? So we're probably not going to see anything in that regard. However, there has been something referenced where they are calling it like a node system. Um, I don't know. There's not really a Final Fantasy equivalent, but I know there is an equivalent with some of the other games I've played. Like I guess I hate to bring it up because again I don't. As much as I did play the game for a while, Elsword did have force skills, as well as traits that you could use to upgrade the skills to make them do additional things, or in the case of force skills, would actually change their effect completely. They said that they have this like node system for the skills, and that maybe they could change the properties of them a bit. Where basically you could like the one that was referenced by 1010 in the live stream, was that like instead of something maybe consuming a gauge, it would instead be on a cooldown instead. Um, I don't really know that that type of example would be that beneficial, but it would be interesting for certain things. Like the really the only skill I'm actually aware of that would even be tied to a gauge that doesn't have a cooldown would be like the uh, whatever the skill is for Moonstrike that consumes Blade Intent. It doesn't actually have a cooldown, it just consumes Blade Intent. So you can't use it if you don't have enough Blade Intent. So putting that on a cooldown rather than having it cost gauge, would that be a benefit? I don't know. And also like that was just one potential example. I don't know if there's other things where like maybe one of them just makes it do more damage, maybe one of them makes it do AoE damage or whatever. I'm not really sure what that looks like, but it seems like there will be a way to further enhance the properties of your skills in one way or another. So we'll have to see what that looks like and what that could potentially be, because there are a lot of skills that really a lot of the utility skills at the bottom here, right, are not typically used. Like Frozen Gale isn't really used, even though it kind of is supposed to be for the Frost Beam, I believe, but we kind of don't end up really using it at all. So I don't know, like maybe they'll make it so that like I don't know, other skills can be used while you're doing your special attack on Frostbeam as well. Because right now Tide Pool's the only one that's impacted by that one talent. But maybe they'll make it so that you can actually use Maelstrom during it or something like that. I have no idea. But we'll have to see. So there's that. And then perhaps more importantly, which was very, very interesting, is that they were going to add role skills. Let me actually go to this page with all the classes. They mentioned having role skills. It was 1010 I think mentioned calling it like basically like a role limit break or a role specific limit break. To me, Final Fantasy just seems more like role skills. Role skills existed, or yeah, I think they were called just like role skills, existed for like each role, right? So Tanks had access to certain ones like Provoke, Shirk, even some defensive ones like Rampart and Reprisal, I believe, were considered role skills, because all tanks had access to those. They also had like, I think it was called like Low Blow and Interrupt. One was a stun, one was an interrupt. All that type of stuff. Those were like examples of role skills. Healers had, well, okay, Revive was not a role skill, even though all of them do have their own resurrect. And ones that they did though have was, I think, like Lucid Dreaming was a role skill. The sleep thing, I don't remember if it actually is called sleep. That was a role skill. And Surecast is a role skill, as well as Swiftcast is a role skill, even though that is shared with casters, DPS casters as well. So it looks like they're planning on doing that here, where what they want to do is they want to give the tanks, I think, a taunt and shirk, really, is what it was described as. In 1010's live stream, they mentioned a taunt as well as a reduced aggro skill, which is basically how shirking works. You pass it to someone else. So you take, if you're top of the enmity list, you take half your aggro and distribute it to someone else. So what was interesting is there was discussions in that live stream about the concept of having a taunt as well as having the ability to reduce aggro, or again, I'll probably just continue calling it Shirk. The ability to do that usually would imply that you might require a tank swap. And we haven't yet had anything that I think has actually required your tanks to swap, especially mainly you would see this in the 20-man raids, right? This wouldn't really be the case necessarily in dungeons. Unless they do plan on doing something where like maybe it wouldn't kill a DPS or healer, but you need to pass it to a DPS or healer. I have no idea. But as it is right now, it seems like there is some indication that the tanks will have some amount of more mechanics to deal with potentially as a result of them being able to pass aggro around, as well as to increase their own enmity by provoking or taunting the boss, right? Now, of course, questions about these role skills as well are like, are these new buttons now on your skill bar, right? Again, if I go to my skills right now, these are all of the buttons I have, right? Are we gonna get another one? I mean, I know that there's technically room on this image for like a couple more, I suppose, but where will these be, you know, or will they be tied to something else? I don't know, but supposedly we are getting these. And again, going back to this, healers specifically are going to actually get a revive, which makes sense. I was kind of surprised that they didn't get a revive to begin with. I assume that this revive is actually one that can be used when, even during like hard mode on the bosses, if someone has a little red circle, which means that they can't be revived normally, that healers will be able to use an actual revive. Kind of like their limit break, except it's a lot less effective, because again, according to the live stream from 1010, it looked like it was mentioned it would probably only revive one person, which is still fine. I think that's fine. It's better to just have a revive that healers can do, even if it is on a single person. I mean, again, Resurrect in Final Fantasy XIV, even though it is not considered a role skill because it has a different name and a different animation for every single healer, it's effectively a role skill for healers, as they all can resurrect. It costs the same amount of resources, same cast time, same cooldown, and whatever. Here, it's definitely a really long cooldown. They want to make the roll limit breaks very long in general. We're talking like, I think anywhere from like a minute, maybe to even like 3 minutes, which I think 3 minutes would seem quite too long. Even like 2 minutes is kind of pushing it. Shirk in itself for like the tanks again, like I think is like a 90-second cooldown. Maybe it's 2 minutes in Final Fantasy. I'd have to double check on that, but I think taunting is only like a 30-second cooldown. So I don't know. So, some of the tank stuff I think shouldn't really be that long at all, because again, depending on how often you might need to do it for certain mechanics, you can't really have the cooldowns being that long. For healers, the res, there's definitely, you can probably make it longer if you really want to make it more sacred of a thing to do, or very make it so that it's not as often, so that maybe you can't cheese mechanics as much. I could see that being the case. And then, of course, what about DPS role skill? I don't think it was talked about in the live stream, so I'm not sure. I don't know if it would just be like a melee or like a DPS limit break where it's just like a higher damage skill. I have no idea. Or if it would be something like, when it comes to DPS in Final Fantasy, they have all sorts of role skills. Some of them are like just heal yourself, but we already have potions, so I doubt it's going to be that. One of them was for positionals, but we don't have positionals. Otherwise, it was basically like knockback immunity, and or like you could heal from your attacks. I guess that would be one, is that you could actually heal from doing damage. Which could be different from your potions, I guess, but I'm not really sure that one would make sense. Otherwise, it was also just damage mitigation, like a raid wide. They had what they called feint, or if you were a caster, I believe it was addle. So maybe they do something like that, or maybe it would just be an actual damage skill, like another additional one that they can use that hits hard, every like 2 minutes or so. Who knows? But I'm really interested in seeing the role skills. I'm glad that they're just adding more to that Trinity system. and allowing healers to do more healer specific things, and more specifically the tanks, it sounds really exciting. The ability to actually be able to mess around with aggro more, and retain it more specifically, as well as pass it to others, potentially other tank members as well. That just seems really, really nice, I would say. So we'll have to see how that goes. And then they talked about Imagines. So as we know right now, these are all the Imagines that are currently in Season 1. Season 2 will be introducing more of them. And more specifically, they want to buff the Season 1 Imagines. And what they mean by that is a lot of the ones that are basically just flat numbers. So I think the example is like Phantom Arachnocrab, where like, see how this is Mastery plus 800? I think I've talked about it before in a previous video, but eventually things become diminishing returns the higher your number is, right? So Mastery plus 800 is great right now. Like for the level that we're at with our level 40 gear, plus 800, that's really, really good. If you are a class that needs Mastery, this is really, really helpful. But as our gear starts to increase and you start to get higher amounts of Mastery from your actual gear, right? So like, once your Mastery starts to get higher from the gear itself, all of a sudden this 800 starts to exhibit the issue of the diminishing returns, where maybe, whereas like right now this would actually be like, I don't know, this is just making it up, this is not necessarily true, but like maybe right now this is like a 10% increase to your Mastery. Maybe when I have level 80 gear, this actually only ends up becoming a 2% or 1% increase to my Mastery because of those diminishing returns, where you need even higher amounts of it to make up for the gap, basically, is you need way more to make any significant change. And so what they're saying is that they're probably going to change a lot of these passive effects to be just straight up percentages, probably more along the lines of, I don't know, kind of like how these ones are like strength, intellect, and agility plus 6%. I'm trying to think if there's any, I think Muku King, yeah, healing output 8%, right? So probably just making it so that a lot of these things are percentage if they're not already. So again, like crit damage is already percentage based. This one, where's the one that I think gives versatility? Like Celestial Flyer is another one. Haste 800. This one will probably change to a percentage. I think it's Goblin King that does all this stuff, and then versatility plus 800. This might change to a percentage as well. So that's one of the things they brought up. They also mentioned that the Season 2 Imagines will not power creep the game or make the Season 1 Imagines irrelevant. Obviously, they're claiming that, which would be great if true. We'll have to see. Of course, the person who was, leaking this, I suppose, at least mentioned that they believe Muku Chief is basically completely good still in the new season, and that there aren't really any Imagines that would replace this. So for people that are using it or their class wants it, that it's still great for that class. So, maybe that is the case where it is true that that's the case. I think there was even mentioning that they just want the Season 2 Imagines to cover even more like niche aspects for classes, where like, again, like we have a golden one that does Mastery, and we have the Celestial Flyer for haste, Goblin King for versatility, but maybe, I don't know, we want one that like more specifically increases your like block rate or your luck or something by like a much higher amount, or maybe increases your shield output by a lot more, although I guess this one already does that. But just more unique stuff. And in terms of human Imagines, we'll have to see what they do, or the NPC Imagines, we'll have to see what they do for that. But in general, it seems like the Imagine system as a whole probably isn't really changing too much, but at least maybe it's not being power crept. We'll have to see. Maybe they'll still make some changes to the Imagine system, but I don't know. There was some housing stuff, but I'm not really going to talk about that because I kind of talked about it in the last video. But they are going to have custom emotes, at least for maybe the like photo capture ID stuff. And the way that they described it is that it's basically by like combining these emotions that are already in the game together with some restrictions. I know that some of these technically can be used if you're sitting down even, where some of them are only controlled by the upper body. So I'm not exactly sure what that would look like. But the idea is that maybe you can actually utilize kind of multiple emotes together to create a unique emote outcome, I suppose, and then use that for images and whatnot, or your photo ID and stuff like that, right? So that was something that was kind of interesting. Another thing was they're basically adding a new raid gear effect. So again, one of the things we don't have yet is the actual new gear sets, which we'll experience soon enough with the level 60 gear when the raids do actually come out. Again, I think you just go to the one NPC. I don't even know if we can preview it yet. I don't think we can, but if we could, it would be right here with the floating island envoy, because that's where the gear would be, I think. But yeah, so basically just new raid gear set effect that will be different from the current ones, right? So certain ones will like increase your healing output by, or for like this specific thing or whatever, by 12% or something like that, or increase this type of damage by whatever, right? So the new raid gear will have different effects. Maybe they'll be better, maybe they'll be worse. We'll have to see. On top of that, obviously, it was mentioned that they're going to make multi-classing easier. Now, we did talk about before how we mentioned, or they mentioned in the Season 1 teaser on Maxroll website that enhancement was going to be shared, but we didn't really know what that meant. It was very confusing because we already know that refining is shared, right? All of this stuff applies to every single one of your gear for each of these categories. The only things that don't are the embeds as well as the reforge. So to me, when they said enhancement, it felt more like the reforge system. So I was kind of thinking that maybe if like this weapon is already at 100 perfection reforge, that all my other weapons would also be at 100 perfection reforge. But I have no idea. It would help a little bit with multi-classing, but really when it comes to multi-classing, if they really, really want to fix it, is to fix the actual major concerns, which right now is, in my opinion, well, I think the biggest thing, which isn't even my opinion, I think it's just objectively true, is the skill books, right? So if you want to advance any of these, you need skill books. Skill books are for their specific class. In fact, if you notice, this is my ice mage that I'm multi-classing with my life bind. I have Frostbeam at tier 1. I have nothing else. And this is only at tier 1 because I actually just was lucky enough to have enough books to even level it up tier 1. If I go back to my actual main class, my Verdant Oracle, right, and I look at the skills here, you know, my skills will actually be like my Life Bloom's tier 5, my Nourish is tier 5, you know, my Blossom Charge is tier 2, right? Because I am focusing on this, and these require a lot of books. So when I'm opening up my Advanced Book Select cubes, I'm mostly using it for Verdant Oracle because that's the one I'm focused on right now. But I can't, like, if I'm using those books on Verdant Oracle, I'm gonna have nothing for my Ice Mage. And it's also one of the reasons why my Verdant Oracle is like 1,000 ability score higher, is because, you know, the books do increase your ability score because they increase the output of your damage or your healing and, you know, basically everything by a more significant amount because it actually changes the percentage rather than just the additional number on it. So scaling is a little bit better in that regard. So what they really need to do is figure out a way to make books potentially universal. I don't know if they'd be willing to go that far, but either they need to make books not be like limited, because again, right now it's kind of limited. You can get them, I think, from like the daily box cubes or whatever. I don't think I have any. Actually, they're in the mystery store. I haven't bought this one, but like this can drop any of them, right? But you also have to be lucky to get that. Otherwise, you're basically locked with like the Honor Coin shop, which I've already brought out it for the week. It's 25 boxes, right? Which actually I think will end up not even being enough to cover the tier 6. I think 25 only covers up to tier 5 maybe for one skill. So it's like severely time gated to get any more than that. Which is kind of problematic, especially if you are multi-classing. So either they need to make it not time gated anymore, or what I think would actually be better is just kind of make it universal with the same way that like these talent points work, right? Where if I have 64 talent points, if I swap over to Ice Mage, I still have 64 talent points. So if they just make it so that these aren't like Like this is more of just like a thing you obtain. So like if you have however many books, if I switch to, so for example, I guess the best way of talking about it, right, is that like if I use, I don't know how many books I would have used here. Let's just say I use 200 books for life buying here. If I switch to Ice Mage, it gives me 200 books to use for Ice Mage because that's the same amount that I've used for Verdant Oracle. And then if I obtain any more books that I start to use, then it'll still, again, give me that same amount on the other classes. That would be huge because then at least, even if I still have to earn the books and even if the books are still time gated, it's a universal resource, so it applies to everything and it's shared between everything. That would make multi-classing way more viable in that regard. Another thing is the arcane seals, which are not really an issue when it's between roles, right? So for example, if I want to switch between Verdant Oracle and Beat Performer, it's actually not really that much of an issue when it comes to the arcane seals because I can just reset my skill tree at any time, right? I can reset this by just hitting this. It doesn't cost anything. It'll give me all my arcane seals back, and then I can swap to the other one. Note that I kind of have to do that because if I don't reset my skill tree, I actually will have to use more arcane seals on the skill tree for the Beat Performer, which is just really annoying because it seems unintentional or like an oversight from their part. Because it's like, why would I want to get more arcane seals when I know I already have enough for one healer and I can just reset the skill tree and then swap classes and then reinvest everything, complete the skill tree that way instead of grinding to get more arcane seals. Like that just doesn't make any sense. So they should make arcane seals, in my opinion, universal as well, or at least universal within the role. Again, it's just put it like as a tab next to the talent points here. So like if it says that I've used, or I have like 45 arcane seals that I've used or that I have to use, right? Then just make it here so that if I swap to Beat Performer, I don't have to reset my skill tree. I can just see that, oh, by the way, you've used and or have 45 arcane seals to consume because that's what you used on your previous one. Go ahead and use those here. That's going to make that easier. So if they do that for the skill books and they do that for the arcane seals, that's going to make multi-classing way more viable from the get-go. Because even though there is the gear stuff with like, oh, but gear might want different stats, I think that you technically can grind for duplicate gear that just has better stats for that class. Now, I imagine they still also might do kind of what they already do for the raid gear, but they just might do it for all gear now, where basically raid gear will adjust some of these advanced attributes to actually just straight up match what your class actually wants. And if they start to do that with all of the gear, that would be really nice. It kind of would make me wonder what the point of, having the thumbs up stats would be then, though, if you're just always going to get them. But it is something to consider, and I think like the gear part is actually the least problematic aspect of multi-classing because again, you can get gear for all of the classes if you really wanted to. Would it be a grind? Sure, but it's actually not technically time limited or weekly limited like the other ones are, right? Like I can grind for weapons and gold gear all day long if I really wanted to, as far as I'm aware. I don't think there's a cap on that. I could go and queue into the Chaotic Realm or I think it's called Chaotic Realm. Yeah, I could queue into any of these dungeons and do like the 5-run pity or whatever and get golden gear over and over again with whatever class I go into it with, right? And I can just start grinding gear that way and hopefully get stats that are better for that one, right? I can do that. And especially since we know that they are bringing gear loadouts, it would make it easier to actually swap between the classes that way with that gear because I wouldn't have to, again, like unequip all this gear and replace it with another, piece of gear, right? Like I wouldn't have to keep going from this to swap between two of them, right? So I wouldn't have to worry about that. But we'll still have to see how much easier they actually make multi-classing. Aside from that, to kind of wrap things up, we know that they're bringing more leisure activities. I believe it was revealed to be Mahjong. They're adding as a leisure activity, which is neat, makes sense. And that there might be a potential IP collab for the Chinese server potentially mid-November, but potentially not. And we're not sure quite yet what the IP will be if it is going to happen, other than them saying it wasn't going to be Sword Art Online. So I don't know. We'll have to see if it is anything. They did talk about as well, which is another good thing because I've seen people talk about it before, the outfits, I think as both part of the Gacha as well as the Meow store. A lot of these are technically one-piece outfits, right? So this is a one-piece outfit. Same thing for this. This is a one-piece outfit. It's not actually two parts. The accessories obviously are separate, but otherwise everything is like a one part. I guess the shoes here and the gloves are separate, but again, main outfit is one piece. What they said is that the new outfits they want to bring will not be one piece and will actually have separate parts, so that you can mix and match them as you want, which makes sense, and I think it's just always for the best. Because I think you could still make multi-part outfits that still look like a one piece, if you really want to call it that. Like, they really could. Like, this could just be like, this shirt is this whole part that kind of tucks under or tucks over the pants and comes out here, and then the pants are just its own thing that is just from the black underneath and goes all the way down to the shoes, right? Like, this could have been separate probably, but it wasn't. But it looks like going forward they want to make it separate, which also, like, people would actually be probably more likely to want the outfit if you could separate the parts instead of fully committing to it. So that's going to be nice. And then another one is this one they're not going to do, at least not yet, but they actually do want to add the like Final Fantasy need greed pass system for loot in at least the 20-man raids. I'm not sure about the dungeons. It wasn't mentioned in 1010's live stream, but they did mention specifically in the raids that they want to do that. It won't be there yet. It probably won't be added in Season 2 even, because they said that they have some coding capacity issues with it, where they just are trying to figure it out, and they just don't have the people for it right now. But it is something they want to do in the future, so we might end up seeing something like that. And more specifically, they just want to do more balancing around reclearing. I don't really know what that means. That could be good or bad. Right now, what is actually a kind of a frustrating thing is one, reforge stones, which can drop from these dungeons, right? These things here. These apparently, I didn't even really realize it until I hit it, but these have, I believe, a weekly limit where you can literally only attain a certain amount of these a week from dungeons. I don't know what that weekly limit is. I don't even see it mentioned anywhere when I go to a dungeon or anything like that. I'm not aware of what that limit would be. Like if I literally go to the actual Unit X research facility or whatever, I don't know where it would say that my limit is. Maybe the Pioneer Reward mentions that it's like 6 times. That seems pretty low, and I think that's not correct. I don't know where the limit is for the reforged stones. I don't know where it's listed. I don't know if it's mentioned here. I don't know at all. Like, these are rewards, basic, clear, each successful clear, guarantees. There's Banelord stuff here. Like, I don't know. Like, there's the Reforged Stone here. Oh, I guess this is where it mentions it. Weekly limits applied to Reforged Stone rewards, but each gear tier has its own independent cap. So, I don't even know. Oh, I guess that would be for, like, purple? Or maybe this is specifically talking about how Master Mode can have, like, the level 60 stones and then the level 80 stones. I don't know. And I didn't even really realize that apparently Bane has a weekly limit as well. Like, a lot of these weekly limits, I kind of wish just weren't there. I think it's kind of annoying, kind of stupid. I don't know if they're going to change anything like that. I kind of hope that they do. And if they don't, at the very least, what I do hope that they do, because I think that this one is kind of really annoying. Maybe it becomes less annoying when the raids come out and Master Mode comes out, but right now, these Starforge crystals are really, really annoying. Because if you look at how many different ways you have to obtain them, you have the Honor Coin Shop, that's weekly limited. Unstable Space, that's daily limited. Trading Center is good luck, I guess. I think they can drop from the Monster Hunt boxes, which is, I think, really where it would be put on the Trading Center then. Or the Mystery Store, which again is daily limited, so good luck. There isn't really, like, the only direct way to do it really is via the Honor Coin Shop and Unstable Space. These two are completely luck dependent. This one, again, depending on the luck of other people, and this one depending on the luck of yourself, right? So that's not really, like, a great, outlook or prospect on getting those, especially as refinement becomes more and more expensive. And then the last thing as well was an NPC dating system, or at least a relationship system, which I think people were joking about. I didn't really know if it would actually happen, but it seems like it probably will, maybe. I'm still not fully sold on what that will look like, or if it's just going to be like basically like the reputation points that we have in the reputation store, right? Like basically like this thing right here, but just for NPCs. No idea. But that's about it for this video. Again, I think there's a lot to look forward to. I'm really interested on the like role skills and how the new dungeons and mechanics and the new raid works. I'm really interested also in looking at how they're gonna fix or alleviate the issues of multi-classing, because again, it is still really hard to do right now. There are some classes that can do it fairly decently. I've talked about that before, but there are a lot of classes that struggle really hard with it because of the fact that they want separate stats and that they want their own specific things, which then makes it really hard to invest in multi-classing as a result. But we'll see. Again, season 2 for China is coming very, very soon. I think it's only like 10-ish days away now. So we'll see more about that probably next week, actually. So until then, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.